Hey, welcome back to Gronsky Books. I am Eric Gronsky. I read, write, and talk about books. And one of the books that I have been reading and we'll soon be talking about is Schadenfreude by Michael Lentz. Now, this is put out by Deep Vellum. This is a small independent press out of Dallas, Texas. And I found out recently that Deep Vellum has a storefront. And because I am only in the place that I'm staying now, I am 3 hours away from Dallas, I decided that I was going to take a drive up north and go visit Deep Vellum. Now, Deep Vellum is a non-profit independent press. They support local and global writers. They were originally founded to focus on translated fiction, but now they also include nonfiction, poetry, and they support a broader literary arts scene in Dallas. So the nonprofit part of Deep Vellum allows them to select books for more artistic purposes rather than strictly commercial success. Underneath Deep Vellum, they have a number of imprints. Their very own imprint is La Reunion, and it focuses on local and regional history and writers from Texas. But they also have several others. Now, very quickly, the Dalkey Archive specializes in avant-garde and out-of-print literary fiction. Phoneme was founded in 2013. They're out of LA. They were acquired by Deep Vellum in 2019. They specialize in translated short fiction, poetry, and their backlist features a ton of foreign and minority languages. Strange Object is an independent press out of Austin, Texas, and they focus on debut and early career authors, and they tilt toward bold, experimental, and daring American authors. And then we have Open Letter. They focus on international literature in translation, and it is often experimental and boundary pushing. Now, the Deep Vellum storefront is where you're going to find books by all of these imprints. And so it's a beautiful little shop. It is a little shop, but the whole left side is all of these imprints that I just went through. And then the right side of the store has sort of a curated collection of other, mostly literary fiction, but there's a good section of poetry and nonfiction in there. It's a great little shop. And I was lucky enough to show up on a day where Abby was working, and Abby was super, super helpful. So thanks to Abby for helping me make some selections. I picked up a lot of books while I was there yesterday, and a lot of those books that I picked up were directly from recommendations from Abby. She helped me kind of understand the difference between all of these presses, and so I was really grateful for her help. Now, I want to go through, it's kind of a book haul, I guess. These are, almost none of these books have I ever heard of before. And I picked them up because I'm interested in supporting these presses and this kind of mission to support more avant-garde, boundary-pushing literature. These are weird books, okay? Now, Schadenfreude here was originally published in German. I think this was 2018, was it? Yeah, 2018. And then in 2025, the English version came out. That's translated by Max Lawton. Now, Max Lawton is a novelist in his own right. He's a musician, and he translates a lot of books. So I picked up two books. These are under the Dalkey Archive imprint. These were also translated by Max Lawton. Now, this one is The Sugar Kremlin, and this is about replicas of the Moscow Kremlin made of sugar. So there's thousands of these recreations are given away to children during the holidays, and then they make their way through each stratum of Russian society. We follow the trajectories of these candied gifts from the hands of harried paupers to secret political dissidents, from torture-obsessed civil servants to sex workers in a nearby bordello. That sounds like a lot of fun. I don't know. It seems very strange. This is also by Vladimir Sorokin. This is Their Four Hearts. This is, without exaggerating too much, one might call this the last book of the Russian 20th century, and then Sorokin's next novel, Blue Lard, is the first book of Russian 21st century. So I guess Sorokin kind of straddles that line between the 20th and 21st kind of movements of Russian literature. Again, both of these were translated by Max Lawton. So these books here also are Dalkey Archive books. This is by Edie Poppy, or Edie Poppy probably, Coming Apart. She writes in a stark poetic voice. This kind of explores like when you leave or stay in a relationship, lovers who drift, clash, and fracture, intimacy, escape, shadows of memory. It seems very like a very esoteric kind of exploration of sensuality. I think that sounds kind of fun. Now this one here, this is Harry Matthews' Cigarettes. It is a story about fraud in the art world, horse racing, and sexual intrigues. Or, as one critic did, compare it to a Jane Austen creation or an Aldous Huxley novel. And they'd be right and wrong on both counts. So this seems like one of those books that really kind of defies or resists being categorized. It's a novel about the rich and the powerful, tracing the complicated relationships from the 30s to the 60s. This one is called Midnight is Not in Everyone's Reach. So the year is 2011, and our narrator, ravaged by loss, has returned to Alto Diviegia to say goodbye to the house where her family spent summers during her childhood. Divided into 3 sections, one for each day that she spends at home, Midnight is Not for Everyone's Reach unspools in torrents of dialogue, surreal, feverish scenarios. Most of the books here that I bought are by authors that I've never heard of and books that I've never heard of. So that's why I kind of have to read a lot of this stuff off the back here. So they have a blurb here that says, this is an important and complicated work of art. This is a major literary event nearly 2 decades in the making. Your Name Here marks the triumphant return of Helen DeWitt in a genre-bending collaboration with journalist Aya Gridneff, whose linguistic wizardry is catalyst for a groundbreaking novel unlike anything else in contemporary fiction. A lot of, and then like the front here, this is almost like a meta-textual description of the person who's holding the book in the bookstore. The book on this table is in the bookstore, part of a 3-for-2 offer. You've also been meaning to read Seymour Hersh's Chain of Command, and this too is on the 3-for-2 table. And it goes on describing all these different authors who are reclusive and misanthropic, and it doesn't even begin to describe what this novel is about. So I don't know. I'm a sucker for that kind of thing. This was Wittgenstein's Mistress. Wittgenstein's Mistress by David Markson. This is one of the only books on here, and the next one, well, a couple of them that I had heard of. This is a fairly famous novel that was out of print for a time, and it was brought back into print by the Dalkey Archive Press. This includes an afterword by David Foster Wallace. I think it's quite a lengthy afterword too, if I recall. Wittgenstein's Mistress is a novel unlike anything David Markson, blah, 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 blah. Presumably she's mad, and yet so appealing is her character and so witty and seductive, her narrative voice that will follow her hypnotically as she unloads the intellectual baggage of a lifetime. Now, apparently this is one of those books, like, she knows she's an unreliable narrator, so she tells you things that aren't true, and then she'll go back and correct them. And then she'll tell you some things that are true, and then she'll go back and uncorrect them. This is Chimera by John Barth. Did I get any other John Barth? I did. I got the Sotweed Factor, too. So I got 2 books by John Barth. This is one of the other authors that I'd heard of. I've never read anything by him. So we've got the Sotweed Factor here, and we've got Chimera. Chimera is a body comic trio of novellas. The narrators are Scheherazade, the storyteller from 1001 Nights. Then there's Perseus, slayer of Medusa, and Bellerophon, the rider of Pegasus and slayer of the Chimera. So his narrators apparently are figures from the ancient world, which I think is kind of interesting. And then we got the Sotweed Factor. This is one of the 3 or 4 really big books. This is almost 800 pages. This is his most distinguished masterpiece. Let's see, this is set in the 1600s and recounts the wildly chaotic odyssey of the hapless, ungainly Ebenezer Cook, sent to the New World to look after his father's tobacco business and to record the struggles of the Maryland colony in an epic poem. All right, then we've got, this is A Brief History of the 20th Century. This is one that the bookseller, Abby, told me about. This is one of her favorites. I don't remember what this one is. I just bought it because she told me it was her favorite. and I was, faced with a whole huge wall of books I'd never heard of. So I just bought what she told me to buy. This is Tracing the Great War Through the Millennium Bug, Dadaism Through Sierra Leonean Bicycle Riding, award-winning Czech author. This is Patrick Aurednik, explores the horror and absurdity of the 20th century in an explosive deconstruction of a historical memory. She said that this is exactly what it sounds like, a brief history of the 20th century. There's Flann O'Brien. Flann O'Brien was one of the other authors that I had heard of, but this was not a book by Flann O'Brien that I had heard of. This is The Hard Life, and I bought this solely because James Joyce endorses it. He said that James Joyce says that Flann O'Brien is a real writer with the true comic spirit. Subtitled An Exegesis of Squalor, The Hard Life is a sober farce from a master of Irish comic fiction set in Dublin at the turn of the century. The novel does involve squalor, illness, alcoholism, unemployment, bodily functions, crime, illicit sex, but also investigates such diverse topics as church history, tightrope walking, and the pressing need for public toilets for ladies. I don't know how that's all roped into a single novel, but if James Joyce likes it, then I'm sure it's going to be pretty conceptual. Like a lot of these books. So I know none of this sounds really very straightforward, and that's kind of what the whole mission of Deep Vellum and all of its imprints are, is that these are books that kind of defy normal conventions. These are specially curated collection of books that have taken risks and that push the boundaries of what genre can do and what the English language can do, and I'm all about that. So this is a Gertrude Stein with a foreword by William H. Gass, who wrote The Tunnel and some other books. This is not a Gertrude Stein book that I'd ever heard of, and apparently this one had gone out of print, but this is a little over 1,000 pages. And it is a Gertrude Stein take on the family saga. So I have a very strong suspicion that The Making of Americans is going to be unlike any other great American family saga that I've ever read. Now, the last one from the Dalkey Archive that I have here, this is Palinuro of Mexico by Fernando del Paso. This is a galley, so this has not been released yet. This is going to be published in January coming up. So this, when I finish Schadenfreude, this is going to be the very next book that I read. Well, real quick before I get to the other books, I'm also reading The Melancholy of Resistance by Laszlo Krasznahorkai. This is for a book group that I'm in. I just finished reading Blood Over Brighthaven by M.L. Wong. This was a contemporary fantasy novel. I didn't like it very much at the beginning, but I'm really glad that I stuck with it, because I ended up liking it. So this is with my old gaming group. So while I'm away from home down here in Texas for a while, we're doing like a book club over Discord. And so the next book that we're reading is James. I haven't started this yet, but that's the next book for that book club. So between Melancholy of Resistance, Palinuro of Mexico, and James, those will be the three books that I read as soon as I finish Schadenfreude. So that's that order there. Okay, so now let's move on to these other books. Hopefully this isn't too boring. Hopefully this is interesting for you. I think it's pretty cool. So this is Strange Object, debut in early career authors, tilting toward bold and experimental, daring American voices. So this is another galley that I got. So okay, I'm also reading this book right now, but it's very, very short. I got through the first 25 pages at dinner last night. This is called 14 Ways of Looking. This will be out in April of next year, April 7th next year. I'll probably finish this as soon as I'm done recording this video today. So it's very short, and it's kind of sparsely written. I can get through this fairly quickly. So this is by Kelly Luce. She's an American expat living in Japan. This is short stories called 3 Scenarios in Which Hannah Sasaki Grows a Tail. So this is set in Japan. The beguiling stories in this effortless debut show us what fiction is capable of, dissolving the line between the ordinary and extraordinary, plumbing the power of memory, and Measuring the Capacities of the Human Heart. I think short stories is a great way to dissolve that line between the extraordinary and the ordinary. It's a great place to explore experimentation. I think it's riskier to write a whole novel in an experimental style, both as a reader going into it, like how much time am I going to dedicate to this? Then there's a pair of books here by Ethan Rutherford. So he was a finalist for the National Book Award for his book North Sun, or A Voyage of the Whale Ship Esther. I don't really remember what this is about, but I've heard this discussed quite a lot. Now he wrote, this is our collection of short stories called Farthest South. These were written at the exact same time as North Sun. So these two books were written at the same time. This came out sometime later. But according to the bookseller, these books really do pair very well with one another. So, and apparently this Birdman on the cover makes an appearance and is quite the prominent character. All right, this is the one book that I got from Phoneme. Now, Phoneme was then they specialize in translated short fiction and poetry. So this is the only book of poetry, I think. The only book of poetry that I bought. Praise poems in the Congolese form. This is called the Kasala. This is not a form that I've ever heard of before. And so the author is Fiston Mwanza Mujila. I'm sorry if I don't get that right. This is Slaughterhouse of Dreams, Congolese poetry in the Kasala tradition. So I just want to expand my horizons a little bit, So that's that one. And now the last stack of books here. These are all books from Deep Vellum itself. So this small book is Plasmus by Celine Menard. This is a speculative masterpiece of technology and myth-making that complicates humanity. The stories of Plasmus dive into a post-human, more than human world where life as we know it has been replaced by life as it goes on. Acrobats glide through the air attached to biotech devices. An archivist presents scenes from Earth after interstellar colonization to her students. And scientists in Siberia play God with a man-made beast. So I guess this sort of sounds like science fiction, but we'll see. Yeah, so this is a strange one. So it's a Norwegian Western that uses Appalachian Gothic and science fiction tropes, but it's set in a subterranean office labyrinth in Norway. So this book just feels like it's a little bit of everything. So there's a mechanical barn gnome with a metal bucket for a head. Centers on a ragtag bunch of teenage boys calling themselves the Cowboys. As the narrator's memory crackles and sputters, we encounter grotesque archetypes, a resurrected Christ-like figure called the Dead Feller, and a strange amorphous alien called the Calf. So this is Sansuk's first novel available in English. This is put out by Deep Vellum. This is the lovable yarn-spinning Monk Lang Patin, now in his 90s, was the last person in his village to bear witness to the power and plentitude of the jungle before agrarian and then capitalist life took over the community. So this is the one. This features like a man-eating tiger. It explores an expansive time over this man's 90-year life. This one sounded extremely weird. This is the first book that I put in my bag when I was browsing. This is called In Concrete by Anne Garetta. This is translated by Emma Ramadan. This is Garetta's first new novel in a decade. Follows the mania that descends upon a family when a father finds himself in possession of a concrete mixer to modernize the family home. As he seeks to modernize every aspect of their lives, disaster strikes when the younger sibling is subsumed by concrete. Through puns, wordplay, and dizzying verbal effect, Greta reinvents the novel form and blurs the line between spoken and written language in an attempt to confront the elasticity of communication. So it's just hitting all of the things that I like. All right, so then we've got Texas the Great Theft. So this is fiction, but it involves a great deal of research. It is based on a little-known 1859 Mexican invasion of the United States. It evokes the volatile Tex-Mex borderland. The last book was a book. This is the last one that I threw in the bag before I left. This is by Bryce Mathusiant. This is Revenge of the Translator. translated from the French by Emma Ramadan. So this is the same translator who did In Concrete. So this is one of those books. I'll just try to show you. I should give me a lot of these. So every single one of these pages is a footnote to a novel that we don't get to read. Okay, so there is a hypothetical novel out there, and it is being translated by a translator, and all we're seeing is the footnotes of the translator. Okay, so it follows a shadowy translator through his aggrieved translation and eventual rewrite of a metafictional novel called Translator's Revenge. So there's this like layer upon layer upon layer of like nested concepts in this book, and the only thing we get is his furious footnotes to the translation of a novel that we don't get to read. So I think that sounds really cool. I hope that I have time to get to all these. I've also got all of these books over here. So how am I going to read all this? I don't know. I'm working on it. So anyway, I have been Eric Gronsky. This has been a video about Deep Vellum and many of its imprints, and all of these books are going to be good, and I'm going to read them all. And I hope that you're reading something good. I just hope you're not burying yourself under an avalanche of books.